Holly, do you want to go ahead and we'll get rolling here for the folks who are here?
Yep, yep, sure thing.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Just wanted to give everyone a quick hello and welcome to our webinar. My name is Holly Habercorn, and I am the Communications Manager here at TheraOffice. Today, we are so excited to have Sturdy McKee with us as he dives into the top 5 critical processes to be aware of in a private practice setting. This is the 4th webinar that we've co-hosted with him this year, and we're looking forward to another stimulating conversation around the topics that we talk about today. So at this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to Sturdy.
Thanks, Holly. Hey, so I'm Sturdy McKee. First off, thank you, Holly. Thanks, TheraOffice, for hosting these. I really appreciate it. And it's a great way to get more information out to more people. So I truly do. Thank you all for attending, for being here. You giving up your time in the middle of the day. I understand that. I'm going to hope to make it as valuable as possible for you. And 2 things. Make sure you get out a pen and a piece of paper, a couple pieces of paper maybe, to take some notes, write some things down. I believe your business should be simple, easy, and profitable. I mean, right? So we're going to work to make it that way. You will make hard decisions, but the goal here is to make those hard decisions one time, and not have to continue to make them over and over again. So we're going to show you how to do some of that and to prioritize and figure out what are some of the things that you should really be focused on first if you're not already. So I'm just going to take the mystery out of it and give you the 5 critical processes. Now, what I didn't tell you was I'm a physical therapist by training. If you look up my license, it's long expired or gone. But I owned practices, multiple locations in and around San Francisco for 20 or so years, 20 plus years. I exited that a little bit after COVID began, in large part because it became a distraction. I have been doing business coaching, advising for a little over 5 years now, and that's really where my passion is these days. And for the 3+ years or so while I was doing both, I was spending about 4 to 6 hours a week running the PT practice with 3 locations in San Francisco. So it's possible. It's very possible. Your business can be simple. It can be easy to run. It can be profitable. And I'm going to help to show you what some of the foundational components of that are. So here are the first 3: your marketing activities, new patient intake, and your selling the plans of care. We'll get into some of this though, so don't freak out about, well, what's that mean, or what have you at this point in time. The next 2, 4 and 5 are bill for what you do and spend according to your budget. Seems simple enough, right? So the devil's in the details. Your marketing activities. Want you to think about and write down all the things you do for marketing, even if you don't spend on ads. Advertising is not the only way that you market, okay? Word of mouth up there at top is probably the most powerful and most effective in any kind of healthcare environment. You know, people aren't really literally buying healthcare off of Facebook ads. That's why some of those processes and stuff take, you know, a workshop and then a free screen, and then you've got to build rapport and trust with those people that don't know you. However, if somebody's being referred by their physician, their surgeon, their friend, their spouse, their coworker, you've already got immediate credibility and trust. So you don't have to spend as much time, and that's why when those people pick up the phone, they generally schedule, okay? So think about your newsletters, re-engagement, making it easy to share with other people. So if I send an email newsletter out that isn't about us, but is about the patient, about you, something that you can use, you might share that with other people or send it over and say, hey, you should see these guys. You were complaining about your ankle or your neck or whatever, right? Swag, right? We still have, from the business I sold, there are still pens at the middle school, the front desk, that have the business name and URL and phone number and stuff on them. So you can distribute things that stick around in the community. Pens are a great guerrilla marketing tactic. You leave them behind at the restaurants in your community. You leave them at the doctor's offices. You leave them everywhere, and you know, your name and stuff circulate around. So what else? What else are you doing? These are the things, marketing activities. And notice I wrote marketing activities, okay? Because these are things that you do. Somebody in your practice does, or somebody you outsource to does. It's not a department. It's not a people or person. It's things that you do. So there might be people responsible for it, but I really want you to consider and think about the things that you do, the activities that you engage in order to get the result you want. you're going to track those results, right? What are the results that you expect from marketing? And then you're going to make adjustments, okay? So when you think about this, and I say adjustments, there are really only three things that you manage and control in your business and your practice, okay? The things that you manage and control are your internal environment, also known as your culture, but also literally your internal environment. So the paint colors, the equipment, the furniture, what art you have on the walls, what the logos and signage you have inside, all that kind of stuff. That's all part of the internal environment. And then the culture is the less tangible part, but that, your internal environment, your physical environment also kind of feeds into the culture and should support that. Two other things you can manage. Think of yourself as a coach. So the coach sets the tone, that's your internal environment, your culture, the kit, the uniforms, the rules, all that stuff. And the coach can manage the players, what players in what position, right? They manage the recruitment. They choose the players, hopefully, and recruit players. And they manage the plays. So those are your processes. So I would encourage you, if you don't already have a playbook, to take these things and start your playbook today, okay? So you manage three things: your internal environment or culture, your players, and your plays. That's it. You do not manage the results. So when we say track the results, you can look at them, use them as a feedback loop, but you can't manage your results. Your results are a result of the activities that you do, okay? A result of the players and plays that you put in place and how well you do that as the coach. I want you to monitor your costs, and I want you to look at that for your marketing activities and the next process we talk about in terms of customer acquisition cost, okay? So I had a client who when he first started engaging with me, sent me over his P&L, and I looked through it, and they had, this is the number, $76,339 the previous year in advertising costs, right? And this was like a $1.2 million business. So that's a lot of money. That's 6-7% of a $1.2 million business. Why were they spending so much money, and what were the results they were getting? So I introduced him to the idea of customer acquisition costs, asked him, what did that get you? And to their credit, they had been tracking the number of leads generated from those activities from the advertising and how many of those converted into paying clients and patients. That $76,339 got them 97 new patients over the previous year. That figures into a customer acquisition cost of $787. It cost them $787 to get that new patient. Okay, we're not going to go into the details there, but if your profit margin isn't $787 per case, you're losing money on that. Okay, number two. And by the way, if you have a question, you want to type something in the chat, go ahead. I may not answer it as we're going through right now. We'll probably get to it at the end, but don't hesitate to write it down, type it in, and make a note of it so that we can get to that. Okay, so number two, new patient intake process, also known as answering the phone, right? This is really a sales process. And if you're not considering it that way, think of these people calling who are interested in your service and whether or not they schedule. That's a conversion event. That's a conversion process. That's a sales process. That doesn't mean you have to be salesy, okay? But it means that you're trying to make sure that you have the proper solution for this person who's inquiring and that you get them on the schedule and that they show up, right? So the challenge questions for you, two of them are, do you have a repeatable process? In other words, is it written down? Is it documented? Okay, and I'm not a fan of scripts. I like doing it a little bit differently, but is it written down? Can you then use that in training, or can you use that if your front desk person was out sick or something and someone else was answering the phone, could they follow the process and do it without a bunch of training? All right, so is it repeatable? Can you repeat it among different people? Is it patient-centric? All right, how many times have you called, and I know I have, doctor's office, dentist's office, to get imaging or X-ray, MRI, or something like that, and they go through this big, long process of your name, who referred you, your birth date, your insurance information, where you live, your firstborn child's, on and on and on and on, and then they offer you an appointment 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months down the road. I want you to think about why the patient is calling your office. Okay, flip that around and think, why do you call your dentist? Simple answer should be, and y'all can throw this in the chat before I answer it. Look smart. Why did they call? To get an appointment. So one of the things you can do to make this process more patient-centric and really simple and straightforward is to put that in the process as early in the process as possible. You're then eliminating or neutralizing or reducing at least the anxiety that that patient has. People are calling you because they are literally in pain, right? They've never torn their Achilles before. They've never experienced, somebody said their rotor cuff is torn, right? And yeah, I know. But then they don't know what to expect. They don't know if they're going to get better. They are fearful and often literally in pain. And we're putting them through a big, giant bureaucratic process, just like everybody else. Stop it. Rethink your processes from the patient standpoint. How can you make it simple? There will be some things in your organization that you decide to do that are not super or as efficient for you and for your team, but because they're better for the patient, you will decide deliberately to do them. Okay. Second or third question here. Do the people doing this know it is their number one thing? Okay, so if you've got 5 critical processes and people answering the phone are responsible for one of the 5, do they know this is their number one most important thing? Okay, think about what I do, and I mentored and taught and lectured and spoke and all that stuff for the past 15 plus years. In my own clinic, okay, probably about 12 years ago, because it was a real wake-up call for me. I was talking with somebody about the 2 most important things for the front desk. This is number 1. Number 2 is collect copays, or co-insurance deductibles, all that stuff at the time of service. Do they know it? And I asked somebody, does your front desk know the 2 most important things? And I thought about that for a minute, and I said, well, does my front desk know? And I went over and walked next door, because our business offices were right next to one of the clinics, kind of our anchor clinic. I walked next door and I asked Chelsea, hey, tell me your 2 most important things. She's like, what do you mean? The 2 most important things in your job. What are the 2 most important things you do? She gave me a list of 13 things, literally. Okay. And I just stopped. And that's a failure on my part, right? That's a failure on me, of mine as a coach, as a leader, as a manager, as the founder. If she doesn't have that clarity, how can I hold her accountable? What kind of results are we going to get? So we stopped and talked about scheduling new patients and then collecting copays, co-insurance. But scheduling new patients, if you don't do that, all those other 12 that you listed don't happen. Okay. And that's what I mean by the number 1 most important thing. If we don't convert these, inquiries into paying customers, there are no, referrals to sort or to get signed or authorizations or, benefits checks or reports to the physicians or scheduling follow-ups or any of that other stuff. None of it happens. So this is the most important thing that player does, right? You track the results, and again, you adjust. And the only 2 things you can really, really adjust, maybe 3 around the culture as a prioritization or how you make decisions, but are the players and the plays. So can you change the play? Can you change the process? Yes. If the process works, but the player can't execute, if you want a championship team, do you keep that player? Number 3, selling the plans of care. And I know everybody in healthcare shies away from selling and sales, and they kind of freak out, and you really got to get them over it. We're not talking about convincing someone to do something that's not in their own self-interest. Okay, it's the same as my sales process now as a coach. Fortunately, it's the same as what I did as a therapist. Present my best case scenario, right? My best plan of care. And then ask them, how does that sound to you? I solicit objections. If they're in the best, most efficient place to get them to their goals, I tell them so. If they're not, I refer them. Again, same thing I do now. Question is, do you have a repeatable process? Is it designed to meet the patient's needs? Because in school, we're taught to tell the patient what the plan is. Yet we then put on our websites and talk about how this is a partnership, how we work together with you. If you work together with people and you're not getting consent, and I don't mean the hospital consent and a signed form, I mean, how does it sound to you? Oh, well, I'm going to be traveling. Oh, well, you know, they give you whatever objection. Oh, I didn't know it was going to take that long. Oh, I have a really good deductible and I didn't know, you know, I don't know if I can afford it. Okay, they're going to throw objections back at you some of the time, or maybe they'll agree and they'll go, okay, great, I'm on board. Great. Address those objections, get agreement. Once you get agreement, it's going to be so much easier to hold people accountable to showing up. Okay, so do you have a repeatable process? Sorry. Is it patient centric? Is everyone doing it consistently? Okay, everybody across the board. When's the last time you watched your staff? You do it with your patients all the time. Think about that for a second. You come in, or a patient comes in and you say, how's your home exercise program doing? How are you going? Going well, it's going great. Okay, what do you say next? Do you just move on? Generally, most of you will say, okay, why don't we run through it? Show me your exercises, right? And then you find out whether they're doing them or not, right? You find out if they're doing them correctly. You find out if it's bothering them to do them, right? When's the last time you did that with your team? How's the intake process going? Or how's the plan of care process going? It's going great. Okay. And you walk away. Stop. Okay, let's walk through it. Why don't you show me? You're gonna find out if they're doing it. Okay, you don't even have to monitor them. You don't even have to watch them. You ask them to show you just like you do with the home exercises. And if they do it, great. If they don't, or don't know how, or avoid it, not so great. All right. So, and then the other part of this is these are your clinicians, these are your therapists. Do they know that this is their number one most important thing? Again, based on the same premise. Selling the plan of care, getting agreement from the patient, getting buy-in so that you can schedule people out so that they can achieve their goals is the number one most important thing that your therapists do. Now they're going to give you, well, what about assessing? Well, yeah, that's part and parcel. You got to do that. But if the patient doesn't show up, it doesn't matter what your assessment is. Right? If the patient doesn't come to the rest of their appointments and doesn't achieve their goals, it doesn't matter how good your clinical skills are. So let that sit for a second and use that with your team. Okay. Ahead of time, again, we can track the results and then we adjust, and you're going to track the results in a little bit different way than you've already done. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But I remember I had a friend, Christine Comerford, and she's an author, and she came in to see us, and I'm not violating anything, telling you any personal information about her, okay? And this was years and years ago. But Christine came in and she saw one of her therapists, right? She saw Jessica, and Christine's a super type A, kind of in your face, extrovert, high energy person, right? Christine, after appointment, comes over and just opens the door of my office, walks right in and goes, so what's the plan? I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Right? She's like, what's the plan? I'm like, what do you mean, what's the plan? Didn't Jessica talk to you about it? She's like, no. Like, what do you mean she didn't talk to you about it? She's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. And I went, oh my gosh, okay, come on. And I walked Christine back over to Dr. Jessica and said, hey, Christine needs to know the plan. She didn't tell her what her proposed plan of care was. Christine didn't know to schedule any follow-ups. And when she was finally leaving, after we kind of got that sorted and what have you, Christine was yelling at me down the hall as she was leaving, hey, no secret treatment plans, right? No secret treatment plans. You've got to tell people and you've got to get their consent or buy-in. And if you're not monitoring or you're not finding out from your people what's going on, they may not be doing it. And of course, I was making assumptions that was happening. Wasn't happening. Okay. Number 4, bill for what you do. Again, do you have a repeatable process? Do you have something written down and documented that you can train new staff, that you can monitor, that you can see? Is everyone doing it consistently? How are you tracking that? Do people know, because this is your clinical staff, do they know that this is their number 1 or number 2 thing? So if you have assistants and all, they're not selling the plan of care, they're helping with it, but this will be their number 1 thing. For your therapist, this is the number 2 thing. They have the 2 most important things, selling the plan of care and bill for what you do, you're going to get better results. Okay, and if you put your coach's hat on and design that and document it and discuss with them and get buy-in and make sure that your team is on board and understands what their 2 most important things are, you're going to get better results. You're going to simplify your life. your management's going to get easier. And guess what? Part of the better results is more profit. Monitor and track your results, and then you make your adjustments. Remember, what are the two things you can adjust? Your plays and your players. Last one, number 5, spend according to your budget. Okay, everybody overcomplicates this. Okay, and I mean everybody, or you're doing your budget wrong. And I started talking about profit first, and then people thought about the book Profit First and all the different bank accounts and different stuff. No. You have 3 buckets. Let's keep this super simple. This is one of those things you're going to write down. Okay, 3 buckets. Profit. What's your profit? Start with a profit margin or amount. Profit margin is a percentage. Okay. Then you've got your overhead, which is all your fixed expenses. It's all the things that will not go up and down with hiring people. So if you hired 3 more therapists, would your rent go up? You know, only if you had to expand or move, right? So your rent is part of the overhead. If your phone bill isn't going to change, or at least not much, right? Your internet is not going to change. Your equipment is not going to change if you have a lease or something. So all the stuff that doesn't change if you added more staff or you decrease the number of staff. Okay, that's the other side of that coin. If 3 people left and those expenses stayed the same, those go into your overhead bucket. So that's 2 buckets, profit, overhead. The third bucket is anything related to personnel. Okay, and people like to say variable expenses and all this other stuff. Don't worry about the accounting jargon. Worry about everything associated with personnel. So these are all the things, not just wages, not just salaries and benefits, okay? All the things that will go up and down when you hire somebody, okay? So yeah, your salaries and wages and benefits and all that stuff and taxes are all part of that. Your work comp insurance is part of that. If your liability insurance increases by number of staff, then that would. Software licenses, okay? If you have to pay for more, another incremental increase in your software license. All the stuff that's related to hiring people or to supporting those people goes into the personnel budget. And if you set your profit target at 15% and you know your overhead is 20%, then what do you have left over? That's how simple your budget should be. Because what you have left over is your salary cap. That's your personnel budget cap. Because if you spend over that budget amount, it ain't coming out of your overhead. And there's only one other place it can come from. Okay, so think about your 3 bucket budget, set your targets for each one of those, and then update it accordingly. So update it when you hire somebody, update it when you increase production capacity, update it when you sign a new lease. But you're going to need to update it periodically, not every month. You set your targets and you look at your numbers each month, you look at your P&L, you categorize your stuff, and you see if you're on target. If you're on target, awesome. You're monitoring, you're comparing to your target. If you're not on target, you need to dig down, drill down, and figure out how you can get there. Okay, because the whole goal of this is to preserve your profit. You have to have a profit in order to be sustainable and to keep your life easy and have some security and safety for you and your staff, right? So the last question I'll leave you with on this one is, do you know that this is your number one thing? Of all the other things you have to do, and yes, you have to do a myriad long list of other stuff, if you don't monitor and manage your budget and preserve your profit, your business may not be viable. If your business doesn't survive, none of the other stuff on your list matters. This is your most important thing. And I bet is very few of you have a 3 bucket budget that you look at every month. Okay, so make sure that you do that. Now, here all of it is in one sheet. Take a screenshot, make notes, but you see that there are links in this as well, right? So let's go through this real quickly. You have the 5 processes. You have how they are measured. Okay, so I didn't tell you this before, but marketing activities are measured through lead generation. If you're not tracking your inbound leads, then you don't know how your marketing's doing. If you're tracking your marketing by number of new patients, you're skipping 2 steps. Okay, you need to know if your marketing is generating leads, and then is it generating quality leads? Are your marketing activities getting people to inquire about your services? Is it generating referrals? New patient intake, that's your conversion process. That's how many new clients, new patients, new customers, paying customers, divided by inbound leads are generated for your business. Okay, and this is how, if you change the play, you can look at the conversion rate. You set a baseline, you can know if your new process, your new patient intake process is getting a better result, or if it's getting a worse result. And if you've got multiple clinics or multiple people answering the phones, you have a real advantage because you can test these things side by side. Okay, and you can look at that. And when you get enough data, you can see that, oh, one conversion rate, but one process gets us an 85% conversion rate, another process gets us a 76. Well, which one are you going to continue to do? Right? And then you can work on improving the 85, but the only wrong answer, by the way, for the conversion rate is 100. I've had people do that in public talks with 250 people in the room. Oh, well, everybody schedules and shows up. It's simply not true. Cars break down, kids get sick, plans change, whatever. The only wrong answer for your conversion rate that I know of is 100. It's also not 0, or you wouldn't be in business. Okay, but it's somewhere between 0 and 100. Filling the plans of care, you're going to measure that through visits per case. I don't care about cancellations. I don't, yeah, I don't like no-shows. I don't like late cancels, but I don't care if somebody cancels, today for, like, they cancel their appointment next Tuesday and they rebook it for Thursday. Okay. And I don't care, because if they stay to their visits per case as prescribed in their plan of care, then we're going to get them to their goals. We're going to have a happy patient, right? So I'm going to focus on the visits per case, and then that's what I'm going to track. And that's the KPI that is the number one thing for my physical therapist, right? Bill for what you do. Units per visit is the other one. That's the number 2 most important thing for the therapist. And yours is going to change, vary rather. Don't worry about benchmarking. Look at your own process, look at your own patient population, look at your own therapist. You monitor, observe, run through it, audit it, but then you can set targets. But when you benchmark against somebody else in another state or another city with a different patient population and different clinical staff and different diagnosis mix and different insurance, it doesn't add up. Okay, so create the stuff for yourself. And then the last one is managing your expenses. You spend according to your budget. You set the targets for your budget, and you monitor that every month. And there's some things that not within range. You need to then drill down and figure out what's going on. The numbers, by the way, these results will not diagnose the problem. Okay, the numbers will tell you where to look next. So you can't manage the numbers, and people talk about managing by the numbers. Look at the numbers. The numbers are important because you figured out where they ought to be. If you're not hitting them, then you need to go back to the players and the process. Okay, those are the 2 things that you can manage to impact these. In order to do this, you've got to have a couple things, and I want you to hang out. Don't go away yet, because what I'm going to do is give you the link to get this with the links. And the links, by the way, are other resources to learn more about, to share with your business partner, to show, to leverage and use with your team, to help train them. It'd be really valuable. I don't think I've ever given this away before to people who aren't clients. This is worth a ton of money and value. Okay, so hang out for a second. I'll give you the link so you can get this for yourself. All right, but how you do it, okay, you need clarity. Set your vision. Vision of meaning consists of 3 things: your higher purpose, core values, and big, hairy, audacious goal, BHAG. If you have those 3 things documented and shared with everyone, and you set clear expectations about their job performance, remember, this is your number 1 most important thing. This is your number 2 most important thing. And you write down your processes, and everybody is bought in on doing the process. And you can improve the processes now. You can debate them, discuss them, tweak them once they're written down. If they're not written down, though, you're just having coffee. You're having a conversation. You're not getting anything done. Create the clarity. I can't tell you how important the clarity is, okay? So let me share a story with you real quickly. I'm kind of embarrassed about this, but I'm gonna tell you guys. I was engaged to my wife for 5 years, or not engaged. We were dating, and then engaged for a year. So we were dating for 4 years, engaged for a year, and the reason I'm telling you that is because there's another 2 years into marriage, okay, or another year or 2. So anyway, it's been 6, 7 years, and she would get mad at me, right, because I didn't do stuff. Somehow, some way, at 6+ years, it clicked in my head that if you don't tell me what to do, I'm going to piss you off. I'm going to upset you. Okay, tell me what you want. I told her this. I said, I'm a terrible mind reader. Okay, obviously, if after 6 years plus I'm still upsetting you by things I'm not doing, I'm a terrible mind reader. Tell me what you want me to do, and then at least give me the chance to choose whether or not to upset you. Okay. The most embarrassing part of that story, it took 2 more years for me to figure out that that is the way I needed to run my business. That basically at work, I was being my wife. I would get upset with people for not meeting expectations, yet I wasn't explicit and abundantly clear about what it is I expected. Yeah, recipe for disaster, recipe for frustration. Nobody was happy, right? They were frustrated they couldn't make me happy. I was frustrated they couldn't figure it out. I didn't tell them. This one thing, setting clarity and clear expectations, and then making sure you have agreement and buy-in, right? That they say, yes, I in fact will do that. I see the point. I will, I'll get on it. Okay, then you're helping them to be the best player they can be in that position. That's when the execution comes in. The execution is where the bulk of your work is going to come in though, okay? Weekly one-on-one meetings, even for 15, 20 minutes. How's it going? What are you gonna do over the next week to make whatever happen? What help and support do you need from me? Okay, those are 3 magic questions. You can find that on my website if you go to the blog and just search the 3 magic questions. But you find out what they're going to do, their responsibility, and what help do they need, what support do they need from you in order to make it happen. And then the other thing you do with your execution piece is you practice. You role play the processes. Okay, you set up a time. It doesn't have to be every week. It could be once a month, but you set up a way to practice for each of your people to role play and do it because, and this is key, if you're not practicing with each other, if you're not creating a safe environment to make mistakes and try new things and innovate and figure things out and maybe flop, then you are practicing on your patients. Your team is practicing on your patients. And think about that from the coaching perspective for just a second. If I'm the coach of my team and I don't have them come to practice and we show up for the game, and I tell them just go out there and see how well you do, what are the results going to be? And who should you blame? Is that the players or is that the coach? Right? So here's the last thing. I'll put this in the chat as well, but use this link, copy and paste it into your browser or type it into your browser. It is case sensitive, okay? But you can get the grid with the 5 critical processes, right? Copy and paste, it's in the chat, but bit.ly/5 capital C RIT capital P, and you should be able to get the download. It'll be emailed to you. So just go ahead and put in your info and it'll show up in your email, the link to download and have that with the links and the total grid, okay? So no problem, ma'am, thank you. So what questions do you guys have? How is it possible to let people talk to allow the participants attendees to unmute themselves?
Dom, is that something that we can allow?
I don't know if I have ability, but go ahead and type questions into the chat. And yeah, Don says he's going to help or enable you to unmute.
Too. Yep.
But in the meantime, if you have a question just go ahead and drop it in the chat. Go the other way. So we're waiting for the unmute. No questions? Really? Now you're all running to download the grid, but Let me ask you a question. How many of you, just kind of raise your hand or say yes, are having weekly meetings with your staff, one-on-one, not group? Every time I ask people, are you having meetings? They say yes, and they have group meetings. Yeah, y'all can go ahead and once a month. Hang on, Todd, I'll answer that question in a second. Once a month is better than not at all, okay? But what I want you to think about is, would you drive down the highway with your hands off the wheel? How long? Okay, so having every week you can make small adjustments and you can support. And there's always, one of the big questions I get is, how do I incentivize my staff? How do I, and the real question is, how do I get them to do what they're supposed to do? I think by bonusing them or giving them incentives or goals that they'll get better performance. The biggest, best incentive you can provide to your staff is your undivided attention. Okay, it doesn't have to be for very long, but if you sat down for 15, 20 minutes and you had a clear agenda with those 3 magic questions that you can grab from the blog and use them, you turn off, close the door, turn off your phone, focus on that person. That is the most impactful incentive that you can provide to them. That recognition, that knowing that they're important, they're valued, that they mean, that they're meaningful. What they do is meaningful. Okay, and you guys can unmute too, just to ask. Todd asked, what percentage of owner's time is optimal for management versus patient care? What I demand of my clients, and demand, because it won't work if they don't do it, is to schedule 2 hours a week for strategic work. That's not management. Okay, that's big picture thinking about stuff. Okay, it drives them nuts initially. It does. But you got to think about your business and you got to work on the business, even building things like the playbook or working on the vision or those types of things. That's working on the business. That's strategic. That's entrepreneurial work. Okay. In the beginning, that's hard. People struggle with it, but it's super important. Nobody else in your company is going to do it. Okay. So for management time, completely depends on the size of your team. Okay. An effective manager can manage about 8 to 10 people. So you have weekly one-on-ones, you figure out a time budget for that. If you're having half-hour meetings once a week with 10 people, that's 5 hours, plus you need the prep time, plus you budget it, you figure out what you need to do to manage your budget, right? And then the 2 hours for strategic work, and you start creating a time budget for that and divide it up. If you have 2 or 3 people that answer to you that then in turn manage your staff, you have a clinical director and you have a administrative director or a billing manager, and you're meeting with them, same thing, you budget your time accordingly. Now, your managers, you're going to spend more time meeting with them because they're meeting one-on-one individually with their direct reports, and your meetings will last a little bit longer. But as I said to you guys, I was managing a multi-location practice in 4 to 6 hours a week. That included the marketing, included the budget, included everything. You can do it, okay? So yeah, I mean, there are 3 main, Deb put in our biggest issues finding office staff. There are 3 big things. One is finding customers, one is finding staff. What's the third challenge? I forgot right now, sorry, on the spot. But yeah, recruiting and hiring staff is a major challenge, it always is. But if you think of it in the same terms of what we just did with the marketing activities, okay, and the new patient intake and the selling plans of care, recruiting and hiring is the same thing. Recruiting is marketing. Hiring is a qualification process and a sales process. Do you have a repeatable process that you can pull off the shelf and make it really simple and straightforward? Do you have a job posting that works? Okay, write those things down, put them in your playbook so you don't have to figure out again the next time you need a front desk office staff, okay, or a clinician or whatever. What else, guys?
I had a quick question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
About the client acquisition cost. Is it as Do we measure it with certain lead only, or is it just basically a marketing expense for the year and whatever the new patients came?
Yeah, so you want to be, that's a great question. It's a great question. I want you to think of it in terms of all the other stuff in your business, okay? And think of it in terms of what you would do with a patient. You don't look at patient results based off all the things you do, right? The only rule we ever had in the clinic was test, intervene, retest, right? So when you do something with your patient, you're testing to see if you got the result that you wanted. Same thing with everything else in your business. Same thing with marketing. So that's part of the reason marketing activities is plural. You have different marketing activities, okay? And even if you don't, by the way, if some of you think, well, I'm not doing any marketing, your customer experience, handing them your business card, that's marketing. You're leveraging word of mouth, okay? Talking to your surgeon friend, that's marketing, whether you know it or not. You're developing and nurturing those relationships. So yeah, you want to segment and break it down. And if you have a baseline number of leads that you're generating now, and you decide you're going to go with one of these companies to charge you $3,000 a month to manage your Facebook ads and create these processes that are going to be wonderful and amazing and great and get you a ton of new patients and all this stuff, and they're going to spend another $2,000 on Facebook ads, and you're dropping $5,000 a month, how many new leads above and beyond what you already had are happening? Because if that's the only thing you changed, the difference between your baseline and that new activity is your result. It's not as hard to track as you might think, okay? And then you divide the cost by the number of new patients, not just the leads, but how many of those converted into new patients from that channel. And you do it in a deliberate way, and you'll find that you can identify repeatable processes that work. Takes some time, but again, once you figure it out that having a workshop generates 25 leads and 15 of those will become new patients, you need 15 new patients, you have a workshop, right? Or whatever it is. You go visit 3 doctors, whatever it is, but you need to have repeatable processes. Stop trying to figure it out over and over and over and over again. Make the decision once, figure out what, solve for it, and then do it again and do more of that until you've optimized it, until you maxed it out. Kimberly put in the Q&A, how do you convince ownership to add meeting time? Results. I mean, it's part of the culture. And again, if all I can manage are my processes and my players, and I'm assuming you're a manager, right? Are you a manager or staff? Director of admin billing. Okay. How can you manage your staff if you don't meet with them? I mean, to me, it's self-evident. If I don't have time to talk with them and make sure they have the support that they need, then you can't expect me to be a decent coach.
I think I have plenty of time to meet with my staff because they aren't clinicians. But I think the struggle with our company is clinician meeting time with their managers. And
are they getting the results they want?
Jess, I think you're on this meeting.
If they're not getting the results they want, then what are they going to do differently?
Yeah, I think that some of the hard things for us right now are just culture and feeling connection with your teams. And so allowing for that, we're very busy. We don't have enough therapists for the number of patients that we have. So I feel like we kind of have a reverse problem right now. But I think the stress from our clinicians and some of our admin staff is just being overwhelmed and not enough connection with the team.
Again, go back to the coaching. If I'm a coach and my team is burnt out and tired, they're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
It's literally that simple. So if my job is to manage my players and manage my processes, you have time to meet with your patients and you talk to them about what they're doing, you've got to take care of your business like it's one of your patients. That's why I say the 2 hours a week. Okay. You've got to take care of your business or your department or your team the same way you take care of your patients. You've got to give them the attention. You've got to have the conversations. You've got to ask questions. You've got to engage them. And it's the most powerful recognition you could offer again. Oh, sure. Todd's asking, are there any other metrics? Yeah, sure, there are tons of metrics. What are the two most important? Right? The front desk is going to track the inbound leads. There are processes for doing that depending upon your EMR. If you're in TheraOffice, you create a case. The number of new cases created divided into the number of new patients is your conversion rate. And you can audit that and track it and find out if somebody's deleted something or whatever. So yeah, you definitely create processes to be able to verify. Again, these conversations, the meetings, that's kind of the subjective. If you use the same tools as a clinician to manage your business, right? Your conversations and the conversations I have with clients are subjective. That's the subjective exam. They'll give me their opinions, their impressions, or whatever. That's great. Now, what's next? We want to look at the numbers. We want to look at the objective data and do the objective exam. Okay, then we create an assessment. Okay. So Kevin, just go, if you're on the blog, go in the search window upper right and type in 3 magic questions. You'll find it. I just did it yesterday for a client. So I'm glad you're looking though, but yeah, check it out. If you still can't find it, just shoot me a note or an email and I'll send it to you. But yeah, 3 magic questions. That's a great way to start off your meetings. But the other thing for your meetings that I really want to emphasize for you all is to set objectives. If you don't have clear objectives about what you're trying to accomplish with the meetings, again, just like patient care, what's the agenda going to look like? You set the objectives, those are your goals. You set the agenda, that's your treatment. Okay, you can look up all kinds of agenda items, all kinds of meeting tricks and hacks and questions and things to do and whatever. If it doesn't, and just like Googling exercises, if it doesn't fit your objectives, then why would you do it? Okay, it's got to achieve your objectives. And if you're having meetings without clear objectives, that's really just a conversation. It's, might as well go out for coffee. Great questions, guys. Great questions, by the way. Thoughtful. This is good. So what I'm hoping to do here, though, is kind of change your mindset a little bit around how you're organizing this, how you're, what you're doing. There are a lot of moving parts to kind of figure out and get settled. But once you've made those decisions, right? We talked about the clarity. Once you've decided on your vision, it's your vision. You're going to use that for the next decade or more, right? Once you have clear job expectations, you've set the role scorecard. Oh, thanks, Holly. She went and grabbed it. Then you have that for each position on the team. When you write down your processes in your playbook, you have that. You can continue to use it. You'll revamp your playbook at certain points, like when you get from, when you break through 10 employees, 10, 25, 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000 are all normal milestones that the systems and processes, your playbook's basically not going to survive the next stage. So you have to revamp and redo and update. In part because you'll change vendors, you'll change services, you have a new accountant, whatever. You update your playbook as you go through that, but then that'll take you through the next phase. That's the other good news. If you're stuck at around 10, once you redo all that, you'll get to 25. And you'll be cruising, and then you'll be totally dumbfounded that once you hit around 25 that you're stuck. Like at 23, 27, you can't grow, can't make it get any bigger. Well, you have to go back to the drawing board, redo it, and then you can get to 50. Okay, and 50 to 100, 100 to 200. But what got you to 200 is not going to get you to 500. Okay, so in whatever size, whether that's 10 to 25 or 5 to 10, there are these really clear, predictable milestones. Engage somebody who's been there before, who's seen it before, who can help you through. Okay. Yeah, and Todd made the comment, like the practicing before going into a game, it's applicable to clinical skills, absolutely. But these other processes that we prioritize the clinical skills. And let me share one last story with you guys before we leave. I prided myself on my clinical skills, even as a very new young therapist. I was smart, right? I got good grades, whatever. I'm not telling you that to try to impress you, because it's actually the opposite. My wife would come home and her friend would ask, and her friend did some coverage for us, and they're PTs, right? And they were good, but they would ask me clinical questions, right? Pretty often. So I felt really good about myself, right? I'm awesome. They would get presents and gifts. They had patients that would follow them off a cliff, right? In almost 20 years of practice, I got like 2 presents. And early on, I was sitting there going, what is going on? My patients weren't showing up. I'm like, I have all this knowledge. I'm so smart. And people aren't coming. Meanwhile, Jamie and Kathy had people who would, and when I'm not really exaggerating, here's the extent of it. Kathy's patient, she had a patient, she worked at San Francisco General Hospital, okay, the big county trauma center hospital. A lot of people who couldn't afford healthcare, didn't have insurance, all that stuff way back. She had a patient who found out that I did the cooking in our house. We were married and young and didn't have kids, but that Kathy didn't really cook. And the patient was so confused and almost offended by that, that she was like, oh no, you have to cook. And Kathy's like, it's not gonna happen. This lady brought dinner to Kathy every Friday, okay, even after she was discharged. For 6 months, we had Filipino food on Friday evening every week for over 6 months, because that's how loyal Kathy's patients were. Right? So that made me start to really, really question what was most important. I can have the best clinical skills in the world. I started looking around. There were clinics I knew of that were really good, who were struggling, right? And others I knew here that weren't that great, right? But they had, they were busy all the time. What were they doing to get those people in? And I made that my business to try to figure that out. What was going on? How did they have that patient loyalty? How did that work? Because I wanted some of that, right? And all the clinical skills in the world weren't going to do it. So yeah, we need to practice the other stuff. We need to practice all those communication skills, all the business stuff that we weren't taught in school. That wasn't part of it. It wasn't really part of their mission, right? It wasn't what they were supposed to teach us. We can't be angry at them for not doing it. We just need to figure out other places to get that information. How's that for wrapping up, Holly? Just thank you everybody for being here.
Yeah, that all sounds good. Sturdy, thanks for joining us again, and thanks for hopping on, everyone. You'll get a copy of the slides as well as a recording of the webinar once we have that ready to go on our side.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and thanks again for coming.
All right. Take care, everyone.